All right, at this time, I will call the City Council work session for Wednesday, August the 6th for our preliminary budget discussion.
Okay. Well, the nice thing about this one, it was one of the, I guess, easier preliminary budgets we've done because we knew we had a lot of room to work with the LGA increase, and that, I think there's kind of two sides to the LGA increase. I mean, it's wonderful that we got it. It's something that, I think obviously the state recognizes that when you keep cutting the aid, all we can do is cut for so long, but at some point we've got to start raising taxes to make up for it. We can't defer capital projects forever. We can't, do things like that. So it's good to get the aid back, but on the flip side too, I think it's, as some of the articles I think I included in the council packet talk about, it's not just about then us going ahead and spending all that out and, not using it for what I think a big intent was property tax relief. And, I know in the council over the last 4 or 5 years, it's been, we've either, I think basically either lowered the levy or kept it flat. And those have been through some pretty difficult times financially for us with the LGA cuts and, and things like that. And so now when we have the extra, it just makes it nice because what we can do is present the budget where, this is what we think is, our high-end costs to provide the level of service that I think everybody expects. It's going to accomplish everything that we want to do. It's going to fund all of our capital projects. It's going to, take into account, personnel costs, all those sort of things. And we're still looking at a $33,000 decrease from our levy from the year before. So that's a good thing. I mean, it did, obviously it makes things a little easier when we take a look at this stuff. But so basically, in running through it, the easiest page maybe to look at is that probably, I think on your packet, it would be right after my memo. It's just that summary page. And basically it just kind of shows you the difference between last year and this year as far as, where our expenditures are at, which is usually the bigger part of things. But overall, looking at the general fund, our expenditures are up about $173,000 or 6.2%. But that is really made up of just a few big ticket items. And one of those is health insurance. We don't know right now what our increase is going to be. We'll find out in November, December for our January renewal. But with all the changes in the healthcare law, there's a lot of speculation out there of what it could be. So we were a little concerned. So we budgeted a 20% increase. We really hope that that's very high end and that we'll come in a lot lower than that. And if we do, we're going to see a significant savings right there. In where we have our expenditure budgets. The other one is that in the capital funds, for a number of years we kind of stopped transfers or we cut them in half or did whatever. So even with what we talked about at the last work session of prepaying a lot of these items, we still have items coming up in the future that we want to be able to do. So I did basically restored all the capital transfers back up to sort of where they were. Some aren't quite as high as they were, 2-3 years ago, but they're still up there significantly. So there's $70,000 right there. Where in realistically, once we get towards closer to the final budget, the department heads are going to review their capital plans again. We can just see where we're at with some of these purchases, push things out, maybe change things up a little bit. I don't see that number being the same at the end either. Usually it's always higher, and we end up coming down with it. And then just the other one is kind of it's a good thing, bad thing. One, the bad thing is that we have been transferring from our main TIF district, which is basically the industrial park area, about $26,000 a year into the EDA budget to help pay for the EDA related costs. Now, so the bad thing is that TIF districts, those 2 TIF districts that make up the industrial park, end at the end of this year. So next year we're going to have to make up that difference, and so that's where you see that levy increase. But the good part of that is that with those going off, they greatly expand our tax base. Just those alone, depending on how other values look, I mean, not taking into account any other changes, I mean, we're going to see a 7%, roughly 7% decrease in our tax capacity rate just from those properties going fully back on the taxes, which means that if you combine that with what we're saying is a minimum cut we'll have next year, which is 1.5%, we're looking at roughly a 9% decrease in our tax capacity rate just from those 2 things, which means that people's taxes, if everything else stays the same, value, whatever, you know, you always have to say it that way because everybody's values change. But if everything stayed flat, they'd see a 9% decrease in the city portion just from those two things. Now you take into account, this doesn't take into account at all new values as they start to come online. I mean, we've got the Lawrence Meats expansion, we've got the Gemini expansion, the Olmsted Clinic, which is taxable, a portion of the Mayo Hospital, which the clinic portion is taxable, the hospital isn't, Casey's store, whatever else starts to happen around the interchange. As those things slowly come on, all that does is expand our tax base. And by doing that, if we can still continue to keep our levy as level as possible, we're just going to see our tax capacity rate lower and lower. You know, we had that big hit last year when the housing values, you know, we lowered our levy, but we still saw our tax capacity rate rise because our housing values dropped 14%. It's tough to make up a 14% drop in value like that, but we're going to see a big makeup for that, you know, in the coming years now, because what we're assuming is that values have stabilized. Let's hope that now we should see values rise, even if it's slowly. I mean, worst case, hopefully they just stay the same, and that's fine. Because even if they just stay the same, the growth in our tax base from new construction, and then our ability to keep the levy flat or low, lowering it will help slowly keep bringing that tax capacity rate down, which just lowers everybody's taxes. The lower that tax capacity rate is, the less people are going to be paying. So we're going definitely in the right direction. We've got a lot of good things going. You know, we're still, you know, we're withholding the levy flat or lowering it the last few years. We've set ourselves up nicely. When expansion does finally occur again, we're in a good point to really see that rate continue to drop. Hopefully people continue to see their taxes lowered, which obviously just helps the citizens and the property owners, but also helps the city as a whole attract new businesses. You know, the more attractive your taxes are, the easier it is for Dave to do his recruitment with the businesses, you know, help bring them in. So it's a benefit all the way around. So, you know, really with that, what we're saying is, you know, the department heads came in with their budgets that they thought this is what we needed to do to get things done the right way next year. You know, there's increases in there for certain things, there's decreases in other areas, but, you know, overall, it's not like we said to the department heads, you got to come in at 0 and keep it flat, or we want to see a reduction. No, they came in with, you know, what they thought would take to get it done. So even with all that, we're looking at a 1.5% decrease. As you guys know, I mean, in the past years, we've adopted 6.5%, you know, 5%, 6% increases for the preliminary, and we've come back with either flat or lower. So we're always fine-tuning it as the year goes on. I mean, we'll find out what our health insurance is. We'll get a better handle on where our utility rates are for next year and be able to adjust those. You know, there's a lot of things that as the year goes on, we can adjust down. So basically what we're presenting for tonight is that we feel that very conservatively, if we do a 1.5% levy decrease for our preliminary budget, we're just fine, and we expect that to go down even further before we get to the final budget.
And we set the preliminary in September?
Yep. Yeah, we would adopt it at the first meeting in September.
Okay.
You know, I think I'd like to at least, you know, because of the, you know, once we set it, we can never increase. We can't. Once we set it, it cannot be increased.
Correct.
I mean, so
Once
we
you
might.
set it, it has to stay where it is.
I mean,
It can go
we-
down, but it can never go up.
I mean, and we've always lowered it even when we've set it to that level. I mean, I mean, our preliminary, because like we were talking earlier, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And if all of a sudden there's another catastrophe in the United States and the budget and things go south in a hurry, I'd rather have it set a little high and work with it till the end of the year until we have to, and then lower it. I think. I mean, even if we set it at 2 or 2.5 and then worked on lowered, I think we'd be better off than going low now and then not being able to do it if we had to. I mean, I don't know what everybody else thinks.
No,
I agree with you. I agree.
Yeah, I agree. We should set it at least a couple % increase. And
The one thing is that it looks awful encouraging for next year. I mean, I'm still kind of a fan, and I realize the rest of the council ain't going to 45, strictly because of what it looks like next year. If we went that low, I know you all understand this, but we've got to tax and figure our budget out to the size of our reserve, so we are actually given a tax credit if we go that low. The one thing through all that is that with all this budget stuff and this excess money and wondering what to do with it or how to handle it, the one thing that kind kind of got lost in all this shuffle is that we seem to forget about including the Historical Society lots of times when we're thinking about helping out or doing more. They've done so many good things with this new person in there. I've had 2 people come up to me in the last 2 weeks and tell me they went to our museum. And so I think a lot of that is because of the good things they're doing. So I would like us to make sure to keep that in mind from now on.
You know,
Well-
Leroy, I think, I mean, with this budget, I mean, I know we've cut them in the past, what we've given to the Historical Society and to some of these other things, we cut them down quite a bit in the past. I mean, there might be something as we go through this
Right.
that we can look at restoring, you know, a little bit of that back towards them, you know, as we move forward this year. Because I think we cut them in half almost of what we were providing at that point. So it might be something that we can look at maybe restoring this time. I mean, as we go through the whole budget process.
Yeah. And I did talk to Aaron quite a bit this week and met with him a couple times, because I guess I still have trouble how we're doing all this. He was very good about explaining it to me and assuring me where things were at. The one thing that, as I tried working through all this, it was kind of fascinating to me that we were kind of working off a 51% budget, and then we were at 57. And then we had our audit and stuff, and they said 57, but we were 61. And then we got to 68, and Aaron tells me now this week that actually when you figure it all up, we're at 78. So it's a good thing. It's a nice problem we got here, and thank God we got this extra money instead of going the other way trying to figure it out. But I think it's all good. I guess if there's one thing I have a challenge with is paying off the library thing early. I'm concerned about the Mayo Clinic, the overpass, and some of the other things we got going, if the EDA would come up with something. But on the other hand, I realize if we could pay down our sewer and water thing at least for 2 years to keep that revenue neutral, and we can lower the tax base 2 to 5%. It's a move in the right direction. It's a good thing. If we use Leroy's Irish numbers or Aaron's college-educated numbers, basically we all get the same place, but I had to get it figured out. Thank you.
Anybody else got anything? Then I think what we should probably do is just come to a consensus, or do we need to take a vote, or?
I would say, you know, if you want to come to consensus as far as, you know, what do you think you want to adopt the preliminary at? If you want to say a 2% increase, then I'll put the resolution together for the first meeting in September as a 2% increase. So that would, so then you'd be looking at, we'd add back the 33,000, and then it would be another 80,000 about. So, you know, we'd add back about, 110,000 into the budget, and that would give us about a 2% increase. And then, from there, we've got some cushion, and then, like I said, before the end of the year, obviously we can get below that. We know that just from this, unless something drastic happens, we'll easily at least get back down to 1.5%. But, my guess would be we could probably even get lower than that as well. So.
Well, that's why I want to see the 2% just in case.
Yeah.
Well, and that's not a problem, because it doesn't do anything except show up on people's statements, and then they can, and if they have questions, obviously when they call in, we explain it to them, and kind of go from there with it. So it's
Still
no
a lot
problem.
lower than the usual,
6
9,
plus,
10% or
nine.
whatever.
We've had,
I mean,
we've had some pretty high preliminaries in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had 8 to 10% in the past. I mean, and we've always gotten it down to, to 0 or lowered it.
less.
So, I mean, I think the numbers are going the right way. I mean, things are slowly getting better, but, there's always that one hiccup out there in the world that may cause us to have to jump through hoops, and, you can't borrow money when there is no money, so. I think that's probably the way we'd go. I'd like to thank all the department heads and the staff for putting this together and your hard work on it. I know over the last, 3 or 4 years, you guys have cut down to the bone. I mean, I know Public Works, there's no bone to cut anymore. I think it's down to marrow. Well, I mean, but they've done a good job in maintaining and trying to, and doing a good job keeping up the city. And I just want to say thank you for that. And, you know, as we move forward, as we can do these projects and things go on, I think that's what we should keep working on. And, you know, Justin, if you're not happy with what you got, tough, that's all you're getting.
Well,
That's
took
one
care
of the
that.
capital transfers that got reduced to almost nothing. They're pretty good now for a while.
But,
They've
well,
got
I-
enough in there for some office equipment.
yeah.
The one thing, Robbie, is since we're picking on Justin, is I was reading the budget over this weekend, and I got to the part of $9,000 in fines at the library. And I was thinking back to about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when the kids were all home, and I was the one that was paying them. And I would like, in all seriousness, I'd like the library to look at a different policy where parents would get warned a little earlier or something, so we wouldn't have to have them fined so high. Because Leroy, to them and the video shop, I contributed a lot when the kids were little. And it kind of burnt me when I seen that number. So if the board could have a little talk about doing something a little different, that'd be good.
All right. So with that, well, the consensus is we'll do 2%, and I think we're good. And if there's no further discussion, this work session is done.
I'll drink to that.